Hey guys, welcome back to Just a Geek in the Garage. So today I want to talk about this Wera ratcheting little bit driver right here. I really like ratcheting screwdrivers. If you guys have seen any of my videos in the past, what I've kind of said is, if I can't use a power tool, electric screwdriver, drill, impact, then a ratcheting screwdriver is usually going to be kind of my next go-to, just for, just kind of ease of use and efficiency versus using obviously like a manual screwdriver or bit driver. But most of my screwdrivers are going to be, a little bit larger than this. I really like the Annex one that I got, not too long ago. And this one obviously has interchangeable bits, but still, it's still fairly large. And even if you were to put kind of a small bit on there, it's still going to be, quite a bit bulkier than this guy. And a lot of times when you're thinking of a small ratcheting screwdriver, you might think of like a little stubby like this guy from Snap-on, which is a great little screwdriver. Can kind of get into a lot of different places. You can also really get a lot of torque because it has a kind of a lot of meat on its bones in order to get a nice kind of grip on there as well. But one thing about these kind of screwdrivers is for kind of up close, more precision work. Typically, I'm grabbing something like this from Tekton, where this one has interchangeable bits on there. It's not ratcheting, but you can kind of hold it like this and spin it nicely in there. So especially if you're working on, actually this is a perfect example, you're working on a laptop, little screws like this, things like that. Something like this comes in handy. However, I've always thought something ratcheting in kind of that size range would be great. And so I saw this. I believe I saw this. I don't know, maybe a month or two ago on Doc's channel, and I decided to order it. And I've been playing around with this thing for a while. And you know what? I do really, really like this guy. I do have one major complaint, but overall, I'd say this is definitely something that I would kind of look into. So let's look at the box first, real quick, and I'll kind of go into the review on what I like and what I don't like. So we got Wera here in this kind of traditional grip look right there. Shows you it has fine tooth ratchet at 10 degrees, which tells me this is a 36 tooth mechanism. There's the model number right there, 1/4 inch bit driver. Oops, sorry, my gloves are falling off here. And on the back, unfortunately, a lot of it's covered by a sticker, but it's just showing you that it goes both ways and has a neutral position. And this thing is made in the Czech Republic, as a lot of Wera tools are. But it's usually considered it's a German tool. Sorry about that. German tool, designed in Germany, but a lot of their tools end up being made in the Czech Republic. Nothing wrong with that. They have, quite, very, very good, robust tools. If you guys like Wera, they're kind of famous for their Tool Check Plus kits. And when I saw this guy, honestly, when I got it in the mail, I was both happy and slightly disappointed. I wish it was a little bit smaller. I mean, if they could have gotten it to the point where it was this size, I know getting a nice ratcheting mechanism might be difficult, but that would have been awesome to be able to swap this thing out, or at least get this in there. I think I'd actually tried to get this in there to see if I could kind of squeeze it in, but obviously it's just way too big. So just something maybe like if I'm taking the Tool Check Plus around, and I have room for it, maybe I can just kind of take this thing with it, because again, it's got that nice ratcheting mechanism on there. It's not the finest tooth mechanism that you're going to find, but for something this small, I think it's more than sufficient. I do have things like from Vessel, a Japanese made tool, like something like this is a much finer tooth, probably like 72 tooth or even more. But again, for something this small, I think they did a great job with this package. And the nice thing about it, like I said, let's get, here, let's actually use the tool check and get a bit on there. Let me see, is this thing locked or unlocked? It's locked, there we go, unlocked. And let's get a Phillips number 2 if I can, and pop that right in there. So, if you're working on something, it's nice, you can see just how small that is, just kind of in my hands right here. And you can kind of get, especially like I said, if it's precision work, right now it's kind of in the loosening position. Let's kind of switch that there to the tightening position. So if you're working on something that's very, very delicate, something you don't want to put a lot of torque into, maybe if you're screwing in, like sometimes I'll be screwing in screws into plastic, like I was doing actually earlier today for a car taillight. those things get stripped out very, very quickly if you're not gentle with them. And I think something like this would be great because you can actually really feel, you know, what you're doing versus having something that's, you know, a bulkier while you're doing something like that. So I do like this, you know, quite a bit, and I can definitely see this being as, you know, even part of like a little EDC kit or just like a little tool pouch that you take with you, or like I said, even as a grab and go with something like this, you know, toss this in there, just make it a little bit easier and faster to use the bits and stuff that are in here, or even as a little socket driver. But the one thing, and this is probably just a weird complaint from me, is I don't really like the switching mechanism for some reason. I can see a use case for it. So let me kind of show you what I'm talking about, and maybe show you on a different tool first. So, you know, normally, you know, if you have a mechanism like this, you have a selector switch right here. So right now you can see this is just in the normal tightening position. You know, you can go to neutral, so it just doesn't ratchet at all, or you can go into the loosening position. But it's very, very kind of difficult to move this by accident. You know, it's not hard to move in general, but it's just difficult to move by accident. You know, same thing with something like this this vessel, especially with where this thing is located. This one, what I kind of noticed is, you know, the mechanism works really, really, really well overall. But if I have my finger here, right, the mechanism is going to go wherever I accidentally twist. So for example, let's say I'm sitting here, you know, and you know, I want to tighten something like that, and I go back just by accident. This right here is going to switch the full mechanism, and now I'm going backwards here, right? I can see a use case where if, you know, you're really trying to dial something in and you want to kind of twist it this way and then, you know, twist it back that way, that maybe that is kind of the use case for this particular feature. And if you guys know why they did it this way, you know, please let me know in the comments down below. But, you know, I almost would have preferred if it was a little bit more difficult to turn, where because I can see this as a nice kind of gripping spot when you're doing something precision. But that right there kind of really bothers me. So, you know, I don't know what you guys think of that, if that's more of a feature or if it's more of a kind of you know, miscalculation on design. For me, again, I can see it kind of either way, but I just don't like that particular part of it. But outside of that, like I said, I can see this thing being extremely useful in a lot of different situations, and especially when you're looking at a stubby like this compared to that, I think that's a pretty big difference, you know, especially versus if you're looking at just kind of like a traditional, you know, here's just kind of a normal DeWalt ratcheting screwdriver right here that you would see. So you can kind of see the difference here that you get by having something this small. So, you know, tell me, what do you guys think? Is this something that you think would be useful kind of in your toolkit, or just kind of too small to be useful and you would prefer to use something like this? And yeah, just leave it in the comments below. I'll leave a link for this from Amazon so you guys can check it out for yourself. And if you want to make a purchase, it'll be there for you as well. So as always, thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe.